President and CEO of the George W. Bush Presidential Center, Ken Hersh.
Good morning. Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I'm Ken Hersh, the President and CEO of the Bush Presidential Center in Dallas, and it's an honor to be here. It's also an honor at the Bush Center to continue the work that was started by President and Mrs. Bush when they were at the White House, and to take on new work inspired by them and their values. The values around less government dependency, political and economic freedom, and a strong and compassionate country here and abroad. And that last one is very germane to the conversation today. We execute our mission of developing leaders, advancing policy, and taking action through our three impact centers: domestic excellence, global leadership, and our engagement agenda. To be a great country, strong economic growth, great education, take care of your veterans, and develop future leaders. And those are the four initiative areas of our Domestic Excellence Impact Center. And globally, it's about spreading global health, human freedom and democracy, and empowering women. And those are the three major initiatives in our global leadership. And then the engagement agenda is about how we engage the world. And we do that in Dallas through a wonderful museum and archives, and library. We do it through our publications and our outreach, and we do it through partnering and convenings like the one today. Before I get started, I do want to acknowledge the great support that we have from our partners. Tonight and today, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Walmart Foundation, the Boeing Company, Deloitte, Starbucks, and Politico have been wonderful partners in putting this event on, and I thank you all very, very much for your participation and your partnership. Overall support for the Military Service Initiative at the Bush Center comes from Johnson & Johnson, ConocoPhillips, Interstate Batteries, Cohen Veterans Bioscience, Fisher House, American Airlines, Target Corporation, the Oryx Foundation, La Quinta, USAA, and Bank of America, all of whom not only participate in our events and help us, but do so much for veterans across this country, and they are also to be congratulated. So thank you very much for your wonderful commitment. And finally, the awesome team at the Bush Center, led by the Executive Director of the Bush Institute, Holly Kuzmich, and our military service team, Colonel Miguel Howe, Colonel Matt Amadon, Jeff Cleland, I forgot your rank again, I apologize, Jeff, and Anisha Williams, who has been instrumental in putting this all together and making sure we're all where we need to be. And then finally, General Pete Pace, who chairs our advisory council, who gives us guidance and friendship to make sure we're on point. So thank you very much for all your support. Today's topic is obviously a very important one that brings us together, and that is, how do we collaborate and really collaborate to help our nation's post-9/11 veterans make a successful transition to civilian life? Research shows that the three most important things about a successful transition are health and well-being, access to education and training, and finding meaningful employment. And the good news is that the nation has overwhelmingly responded to that challenge. The call to support our veterans, our post-9/11 veterans, is unprecedented in our recent history, and for that we should all feel great. And the Bush Institute, our military service initiative, is focused on the areas of employment and also overcoming the invisible wounds of post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. Today, however, there are more than 45,000 organizations, philanthropic, government initiatives, large and small corporations, millions of individuals who want to help and who are helping in various ways, committed to addressing these issues. But often, these organizations work in isolation and causing confusion and some disjointed efforts and basically wasted resources. And our job at the Bush Institute, and with more than 70 partners, is to lead the charge in bringing together and increasing collaboration to provide more of a unified, common vision and common execution strategy to improve veteran outcomes. So that's what we're doing here today. In order to foster greater collaboration, we've brought the task force together, and yesterday they spent time focusing, as they did over the last 6 months, on the areas around developing key priorities and, most importantly, key action items around those three priority areas. Today at our panels, we're going to hear some of the solutions and recommendations, And if we're successful, our goal will be to increase the synchronization of the effort and to make a dramatic impact where 1 + 1 will actually equal 3 or 4 or 5. So what better way to start today than hearing actual stories from inspiring post-9/11 veterans and their successful transition to civilian life, which has enabled these three outstanding individuals set an example for all of their peers across the country as they transition from what their experiences were in the service and now as veterans in the civilian life. It is an honor to introduce and pass the microphone to a member of our advisory council, Mike Rodriguez, Fontaine Wilson, and Florent Groberg. Please welcome them.
My name is Michael Rodriguez. I'm a post-9/11 veteran. I'm the husband of a post-9/11 veteran. I'm also the proud father of a post-9/11 veteran. I served for 21 years in the United States Army as a Special Forces Green Beret. Oftentimes people ask me, what happened? What's your story? Where'd you get injured? The most memorable time was when my son, who was 6 at the time, came to me and asked me that very question. He had seen the gradual decline in my health and couldn't understand why. So he asked me one day, "Daddy, what's wrong?" I was struck with his inquisitiveness, but more so by his true sincerity and compassion. So we sat down with a few sheets of paper and a pencil, and I began to write down all the injuries I had sustained through my 21-year career. The dozens of TBIs, fast roping accidents, vehicle rollovers, I put it all on paper. This took the form of pretty crude sketches and some stick figures. You know, I'm nowhere near the artist President Bush is, so it was pretty rough. But I was faced with a dilemma. How do you describe to a 6-year-old what it's like to be inches from an explosive breaching charge, especially your son? So when I was done, I showed him the pieces of paper. I said, "Mijo, do you understand?" He goes, "Yeah, Dad, I got it." He got up to walk away. I was shocked. He had no questions. So I stopped him. I said, "Well, what do you get, Mijo? Jacob, what did you learn from this?" He looked me right in my eyes and he said, "I learned my daddy is hard to kill." So with that statement from my son, I was reminded of the innocence and purity of a child's mind, their ability to see the beauty, strength, and positive aspects of life that we sometimes adults tend to forget. What he saw in those pages was triumph over death. That's something I could not quantify. I realize every single one of us faces obstacles, whether they are visible or invisible. Obstacles are meant to be overcome, and no obstacle is too great. Through identification of my own personal obstacles in the forms of post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury, I had identified my enemy. As we all know, in order to effectively engage the enemy, you must clearly identify that enemy. The onus was on me. So I began to wage a war against my enemy, a war I wasn't necessarily trained to fight in, but I fight nonetheless, sometimes in the form of artistic expression, but most of the time through my continual service to the civilian and military communities alike. I have post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I eagerly face these obstacles daily. Taking ownership of my own fight not only brought me here today before you all, but it has been the key to my successful transition.
My name is Fontaine Wilson, and I'm a post-9/11 veteran. I served 6 years in the United States Navy as a nuclear machinist mate on board the USS Theodore Roosevelt. I was able to travel the world while completing 2 deployments to the Persian Gulf. While traveling is my passion, my real reason for joining the Navy was to earn a college education without the debt. This would not have been possible without the post-9/11 GI Bill and a supportive community backing me along the way. See, I remember when I was a senior in high school, I had just received my acceptance letter from my #1 college choice. I was beyond excited and couldn't wait to tell my parents. But then my mother let me know that we couldn't afford it. I was crushed. I had worked so hard in school, I was on the honor roll, AP classes, and one of the top students in my class, only to be told couldn't afford it. Now looking back, it's funny how something that can seem like a disadvantage or a setback at the time can turn out to be the turning point and foundation that defines who you are. See, I was determined to find a way on my own, so I enlisted in the United States Navy. And in the United States Navy, I decided not to take the easy route. I decided to join the Navy's nuclear power program, considered one of the most demanding academic programs in the US military. After 45 hours per week in the classroom and another 20 additional study hours outside of class, I almost gave up on my plan to go back to school. But it was that discipline and work ethic that got me through some of my hardest moments in petroleum engineering at the University of Houston. Now you would think after learning how to operate a nuclear reactor that school would be a breeze, but it wasn't for me. I still felt like a lot of time had passed since I was last in a traditional classroom, and I couldn't relate to the 18 and 19-year-olds in my class. But what helped was when I finally connected to other veterans on campus. It was through the Veteran Service Office and Student Veterans of America that I found my family again. Those who knew what it was like to serve in the military and who were going through the same transition I was. I became a work-study student at the Veteran Service Office and co-founder and then president of Student Veterans of America at the University of Houston. This was a key moment in my transition. It challenged me as a leader. My vision was to create a community focusing on camaraderie, academics, and professional development to ensure a successful transition from military service to an academic environment and on to a promising career. When our Chapter 1 Chapter of the Year for our programming and student involvement at NatCon 2016, I knew this was confirmation that we succeeded in creating that community. Today, I'm an operational excellence engineer at MRC Global, and it was actually my Navy background that got me the job there. I'm thankful that at MRC Global, they support and even encourage my involvement outside of work with the veteran community. Being able to earn my college education while having a community to lean on, serve, and grow with has been key to my successful transition.
Morning. My name is Florent Groberg, and I am a post-9/11 war veteran. I served 7 years in the United States Army as an infantry officer. I am also a recipient of the Medal of Honor due to the actions that happened on August 8, 2012. I want to share with you a little piece of my story, my transition story, back into the civilian workforce. But before I talk about that, I have to remind you and remind myself of how hard it was to get there. Like Michael, I suffered from PTS. See, I lost Command Sergeant Major Griffin, Major Gray, Major Kennedy, and Reggae Abdel Fattah on August 8, 2012. And while recovering at Walter Reed, I was struggling with those demons. I was struggling with survivor's guilt. And it took the help of one incredible individual, Travis Mills, quadruple amputee, who really took the time to come talk to me and bring me back out of my rut. What's incredible about this journey is the fact that once I got back up, I realized that I needed to transition. Unfortunately, I was lost. See, I had a 2-, 5-, and 10-year plan. They were all in the military. I didn't have a contingency plan as a civilian. So when I had to transition, I remember thinking, I don't know how to write a resume, I don't know how to speak that resume, and I don't know how to network. So I needed help. I needed a mentor. And just like Travis Mills, I found that mentor in Jared Shepard with Warriors Ethos. He was a fellow veteran. He took me in and he said, I'm going to give you a hand up, not a hand out. We're going to work together to transfer over those skill sets and those experiences from the military into civilian words on that resume. We're going to do mock interviews. And then we're going to network. Trust me, trust in yourself, be confident, and I'm going to give you the right opportunity to succeed. So I shook that hand. I took that path. It wasn't easy. I still struggled with my demons. I didn't have the self-confidence because I didn't understand how an infantryman who carried a pack and walked up mountains in Afghanistan could successfully transition into corporate America. But I believed them, and I took a chance. 6 months later, I had a great opportunity to work for the Department of Defense. I believed in myself because I knew that my skill sets and my experiences could bring something to the civilian worksite. Today, I have the honor to be a member of the Boeing team. I am the Director of Veterans Outreach for the company, but most importantly, I'm a teammate of 20,000 self-identified veterans in our company. I'll be honest with you, the reason I'm there is because just like my teammates at the company, Boeing saw something in me. They saw that the military forged my character. It gave me drive. It gave me courage. It made me mission focused. It gave me confidence. And it really instilled that hunger to always succeed. Today, I am where I am because of those military experiences. They're all key to my successful transition. Thank you.